Here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the TechEd Clubhouse Podcast. Today, I got some amazing guests from the other side of the world, from Auckland, New Zealand. I have Ronel Schodt and Bruce Jackson from Kai's Education, longtime advocates for innovative STEM education and helping schools create some opportunities for students to, build their complex future. Um, and they're doing some amazing things, as our schools work at portrait of a graduate skills, future readiness, AI, workforce development. Um, and we're looking at ways to we can build those skills in the classroom. So we're going to explore that today with Ronal and Bruce. And welcome to the show. And let's start with your story. Tell us about yourselves and what you're doing with Kai's Education.
Hey, thanks, Dan. Thanks for having us. So my name is Bruce, like Dan said. I'm originally, and I'm gonna flip my screen over here. So I'm originally from. Let's look at the map, right? So obviously we got US. We go over Africa. So this is where we live here. This little place called New Zealand, up in the top of it. Wonderful country, and we travel a lot. But I'm originally from over here, Zimbabwe, and I started my journey like we all do in a classroom. And with that said, being low vision, so I'm half blind. And that limits my abilities to play any sports, like cricket, tennis ball, like, well, your equivalent is baseball. So it really limited me on doing those kind of things. And then also being a bit extreme ADHD also got me in trouble a lot of the times and put me in the naughty corner. And basically, where I'm going with this is it excluded me from learning, right? Having those things gave me a lot of challenges in learning, and I was very bored in the classroom and naughty. So put in the naughty corner. Teacher says, "Go get away!" Right? You're just causing disruptions. But later in life, as I started, creating products for not only my son but for other kids who had the same problems, I realized that it took me back to when I was a kid and say, okay, well, how can I develop products for my own self back then? And yeah, that's what I started doing about 5 years ago. um, as well as hacking my own car for self-driving. Before Elon was doing that, I was hacking my own car for self-driving about 5 years, or probably about the same time. And it kind of worked. Ronel was with me at the time when I was doing it in a old Toyota, and it kind of worked. And yeah, so that's kind of story of my journey of making sure we make products fully inclusive for all students. Well, that's my little half-hour intro. There you go. Over to you, and I'll give you some airtime.
Well, maybe, I'll go back as well. So Bruce and I, we've actually been friends for about 26 years. I always, he's had an amazing entrepreneur, and he sort of got me and he said, hey, I need a bit of a focus. So I came on board and, we sort of got Kai's Education going. But my background as well, I actually also worked as part of, I was film and TV and television and all of that. But then I started doing things for the deaf community in New Zealand. And I learned very quickly about that exclusion and how hard it is. And I knew Bruce was half blind in the one eye. And it was very quickly that I had this, everybody needs to be inclusive. All children. And I think it became, everybody is on the spectrum. We have, students from different cultures, students from different communities. And we wanted to give everybody the same chance. So if it was, an autistic child how can you have the same resource in the classroom that everybody else is, and you're not getting treated special? And I think like the word special education is actually not a great word, because that makes you special and put you in a different category. And you ask any student, they say, we just want to be like the others. And that's why inclusion for us is really, really important. And we started one of the products, KaiBot. We developed that. And then we have our coding cards. They're not just in Spanish and Tereo, which is the New Zealand native language. We also made them in Braille. And we're the first robot that really teach computer science to low vision, but also blind students.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, learning to code is inherently difficult, right? Real coding, text-based coding is inherently difficult. And you think it's difficult for us? Well, when a blind person has to learn to code, it's beyond what we would imagine to be difficult, right? Something that's difficult to us is like really, really challenging for them. And so what we did with the coding cards is like they also do audio feedback, so they talk back in Spanish. And you could, we've had, some blind users where we've had in-person pilots with them, and it's incredible the feedback we get from them.
And I think at the same time, we both now have young adults, but growing up there was way too much screen time, yes. And I think any parent that listens to this will agree, is how do we get that balance? I mean, I'm not one to say remove screens altogether. I think we're living in a world of screens as part of us, but it is how we do it. And what is good content and stuff like that. So we decided with KaiBot absolutely to go screen free, but to have a progression. And I think this is where we're a bit different. So if you just want to do screen free, you can use KaiBot 4K to 8. But then, hey, if you want to, you can bring in the screen. You can actually have our interactive social emotional board game, which is the Dragon of Disengagement. You can play that. And what an amazing opportunity to actually bring in those social emotional skills, or I think it's called durable skills now, to bring that in with coding challenges. So, we really try to do something a little bit different and teach the fundamentals and then scale from there. And then from there, we've now seen Sweden, Spain, Finland, they're all banning screens, banning mobile phones and all of that. I think one has to be very careful of getting a balance and get that balance right. But, from there, we know for the next product that we developed was Kai Lab, you cannot keep kids off screens permanently. So we then brought in Kai Lab, which is our all-in-one STEM toolbox, and we had this mirror world, this one world. You've got your physical, tactile, hands-on learning, but then you can see it in the 3D world.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I mean, you guys have, it sounds like your product, your KaiBot, really has a great continuum from, analog, for lack of a better term, because you're coding with cards, right? And I want to dive into those cards a little bit more here in a minute. But also, and I've had the opportunity to play with these because they're awesome. Going into the virtual world and doing it on a screen where your KaiBot not only moves on the screen, but on your desktop too, the actual physical robot. So you got some great. You're not just making pixels move on a screen. You're actually making something move. So it sounds like you've thought about the great continuum through the K to 12, for lack of a. I mean, really. I mean, you're going and possibly beyond. I know we've talked about some other things as well off screen. But tell me more about what these coding cards are and how that works.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Have you got the box of coding cards? Let's just pull that up on this camera. Here we go. Right in front of you, Ronel. There we go. So we support over I think it's like 56 different cards, and each, like the advanced pack has about over 100 cards in total. But what we did with these coding cards, we said, how do we take Python text coding and break it down into coding cards? So that was a real challenge, and we spent about 6 months doing this. It's like, how do we take Python text and break it down into coding cards? How do we structure it? How do we do bug detection on it? How do we stop the weirdness of code where you can do, you can code in 15 different ways the same thing sometimes. How do we check for bugs when we do that, right? Because Kybot is actually an assembler, right? So you're coding, the coding cards are, if Ronel does a little demo on the camera quickly, with some basic coding cards. The coding cards are actually programmed. The Kybot has a downward-facing camera. It scans each coding card. So its camera is quite special in that it reads some information printed on the card, and then it decodes what each card is, and then it loads that program into Kybot. And Kybot, as it's being programmed, checks if there's any errors in the loaded program, and then gives the student a bug alert and saying, bug alert, missing number of loops. How many times did you want to loop this coding card?
So the coding cards almost act like then what if you didn't have something like that would be pseudocode, right? So like planning out, it's like writing your outline for an essay, except the computer science version, right?
That is exactly right. The pseudocode, that they are actually doing pseudocode by using the coding cards and planning before doing,
Right.
and building it. But then it goes from pseudocode, because with pseudocode, it's just like a handwritten sketch of what you want to do, right? But with Kybot scanning your pseudocode coding cards, it then actually plays it out as well.
And now these tiles that your Kybot's running on are magnetic tiles, so the Kybot knows where it is on the tiles as well, too. They're special tiles that it's driving on.
That's correct. Yeah. So they are, the Kybot can read the X, Y, and angle position of each tile.
That's awesome.
So the Kybot knows exactly where it is. So if we run this code again, so if you just tap the run card, Ronel, please, and just run it again.
Right. This is awesome. I mean, this is just,
you see how it self-corrects. So even if I bump this robot, you'll see it goes the correct way.
And one of the reasons we also have this progression, that from here we've got the coding cards. The next level is, if you do want to go to a screen, we actually then have Blockly, and then from there Python. But one of the really early days we decided is to try and get kids into the Python, the text-based coding, much earlier. Because there's no industry where we use Blockly or Scratch. I mean, it's a great way to introduce. But if we can actually jump straight from coding cards and understand syntaxes and how the algorithms and programming and sequencing work, why not then start showing text-based coding? Because that's like literacy. Hey, it's commas and plus and minuses and full stops. And we should actually try and get students much earlier into the Python coding. And what's really interesting in the UAE, in Dubai, they actually start Python coding in grade 2. They miss out Blockly and Scratch totally, because it's sort of just an interim coding, concept where we really have to get them into the text-based coding.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm just thinking along those lines, like one of the things that I talk about a lot is activity before content, right? So like your kids that are getting into robotics or they're getting into coding, 90% of those kids don't have experience with Python text or maybe Scratch or maybe Blockly. but introducing them with the cards, then saying, "Oh, remember those cards? Well, that card does this line on Python." So you're employing that method where the kid's getting something to anchor vocabulary to, because the next part of my activity before content is content before vocabulary. A lot of us teachers in the States especially will front load, hey, these are the terms we're going to use. This is a loop. A loop does this. And what you're doing, which is why I really love this product too, is they can make the loop, and they can make your marshy there that you had go in a loop of those 4 tiles 10 times. And now they have an understanding of it. So I love that part of it.
And I think one of the things as well that we very early on decided that, computer science is going to become part of the language. It's just another language.
Yes.
But how do we apply it? So how do we actually use it in math? How do we use it in literacy? How do we use it in, science and all of that? And I think so often people put those things in separate boxes, but we really wanted to have that cross-curricular approach. And it's amazing to see, like we've got districts, for instance, Durango in Colorado. They did our Math in Action program, and that's an amazing project that's been done by Project Future Project called Math in Action. And Heidi Williams, she was working with it, and it was with the University of Marquette, and it's a full curriculum program that they can use in the math class. So the math teachers were doing this program, and then the geography teacher said, "Hey, can I borrow the KaiBots? Because I want to teach geography." And they were like, "How are you going to, how are you doing computer science in your geography?" But what he did is he laid out these tiles in the shape of Colorado, and then he said, "Drive to each little town and tell me a story about that town in Colorado." And I thought, what an amazing, because again, computer science is just becoming the part of the language. And then once we get that, that's when you then now can go to KaiLab, where we have the AR, the VR, the IoT. It's really that whole, that's the next level. That's really the premium product of where we get students ready for that workplace, CTE ready, where if it's manufacturing or it is, so we've got that like an Amazon warehouse or Mars. I love the Mars thing where we can simulate, and you can go into Minecraft and Tinkercad and create your own robot avatar. So there is so much that you can do. And then, teachers have said to us, every year we need to buy a different product. We just can't keep doing it. So what we're saying, K to 10, 2 resources, and you can go all the way, and we progress that knowledge.
With the same little bot, and whether or not you use a screen or not, which I think a lot of our teachers today, like you kind of hinted at the beginning, a lot of our teachers, especially from what I'm seeing, are kind of pushing away the screens a little bit.
Yeah. And, like following on from what Ronel said, is when we designed this, we took an approach that this is an education product. It's not a consumer toy that we're converting into an education product. It's education first. It's math first. It's science first. It's all those fundamentals first that we designed. So in that design approach, we use a universal design for learning approach that makes the product accessible, that ticks a whole lot of boxes. And the universal designing for learning approach is really good because it forced us to approach development in a way of like a step ladder. So how easy is it for the student, the user, to get on the first rung of that step ladder and progress up? Now, as they climb that ladder, how wide is this ladder? How much width has this ladder got? That means that can they learn math? Can they learn literacy? Can they learn all these other subjects along with this product? We're not trying to design it as a fun activity that you do in the summer holidays. we're trying to design the product so that it's used in conjunction with your maths lesson or your literacy lesson, and it's used as a tool alongside that.
And I think this is where, like with KaiBot, there's other products on the market which is fantastic. Some are screen free, some is with a screen. But what we wanted to do is teach those fundamentals in a sequential way of understanding. And then when we bring in Kai Lab, this is when we start talking about collaboration. So KaiBot is probably a 2-to-1 student learning those things. But when they get to Kai Lab, now you have 4 or 5 students working with one robot on a project. So we teach teamwork, we teach communication, because when they go into the workforce, we need to be able to work together on a project. So then we talk about project-based learning. So when we've got Kai Lab, you may be on Mars, and one student will do all the design elements and the animations and the effects. The one student will look after all the IoT. So it's a bit like, bringing in the little bits or Arduino, but it's all part of the same project. And then we've got the AR and the VR. So you can actually create your own Ingenuity rover, put on the VR headset. We use the MetaQuest, and then you're sitting in your rover that you've designed and you drive around Mars. And, this is where students work together then to complete the whole project, and you get all the data out and they share the data. And that is great for summer camps. This is not just, we've got 45 minutes, let's quickly do something. With Kai Lab, this is probably a 4 to, it's a couple of days, or it can be a week or even over 10 weeks, the projects are there. So we've got these different maps. You'll see the one that Bruce has got up at the moment. That's the water cycle. I love this. So you basically type in your zip code, and then it will tell you may be in Colorado where it's really wet, or you may be in Utah that's really, really dry. And how do we save and conserve water? So you have to lie out these pipes. Your robots can open and close the flow of the water. And you need to try and keep your human being and your farm animals alive in a 2-week period. So we do bring in that gamification. But remember, Kai Lab is for grade 5 to 10. So it's the older students. And although you can see the Blockly on there, we very quickly say, well, let's lock the Blockly, and they can only code in Python. So it's a really good translation.
Yeah, so you're challenging your maybe the kids that get it a little bit quicker, to not be bored, right? Which is, I love that. I did that. That was me for 32 years in the 7th grade classroom, right? Because, you have kids that have had some experience at it. Want to touch on real quick. You talked about these skills, right? This communication, critical thinking, collaboration, creativity, the 4 C's and all this stuff. And that's built into what you're doing, partially because it's hands-on. But those aren't things that you like explicitly said, hey, this has to be in there. They were just kind of there because of the nature of the project and what you're doing, correct?
Absolutely. And I think one of our big mottos is failure. Actually, we should teach kids what is failure. Learn from your mistakes. We've had some interns working with us, and we'd say, okay, design a logo. They would design the logo, giving it to us, and then walk away. And we're like, can you make some changes? And they would like, what? We've delivered it.
That's the final product.
And like, well, there's maybe some mistakes, or we want to make changes, and they don't get it. Yeah. So I think we really have to teach failure. Try it again. And learn from each other, and communication. And I think that communication thing has been it's been something that's been really, really close to my heart. And that's why we've developed Dragon of Disengagement. And it was actually done totally random. We were at ISTE, we were doing a breakfast, and the wonderful Brett Salakis from Australia, he's with HP, and Heather Brown, she's one of our big supporters.
Great people.
they did this little Gandalf, Lord of the Rings, and it was, Heather was the dragon, and they were going to slay the dragon, and we're like, the communication skills and the social skills, and we're like, oh, we've got an idea. And Bruce took it, he went away, and we delivered, and we built this whole dragon of disengagement, which we then worked with some psychologists to get questions. He's going to play it, just get so excited. So we then built this dragon of disengagement with a psychologist using the Castle framework to really look at those social emotional skills. And again, you can play it screen free, or you can have it with a screen. And it can be competitive or collaborative. So I love that. I'm very competitive. So then, one team can ask the other team. And, maybe one of the questions can be, if you see somebody get bullied, what should you do? So you get these 3 answers, and each answer is going to give you different points. Each answer is okay, but there's one that's going to give you lots of points, and those points go towards slaying the dragon. So, it may be, you saw somebody bullied, well, go and get an adult to help you. The other question is step in and help your friend, and the other one is just walk away. So you can actually do all 3, but then on the back, each question and each answer has got an explanation. Why should you do what you do? Obviously, the best one is to really call an adult to help and diffuse the situation. But we've tested this, and what was amazing is seeing kids starting to talk to each other, even if they disagreed in the beginning, because they have to come up with one answer. And seeing them, well, I don't think that's right, or hey, let's talk about it. And we really got, and we actually tested it just a couple of weeks ago. We had some students, and it was boys versus girls, which I love. And the boys were like, oh, we're going to play, we play rugby. This was in New Zealand schools. And they played this game. And afterwards, I could see the sensitivity in these boys. And I said to them, once we finished playing, I said to them, so what are you guys going to do on the weekend? Because I thought the boys are going to say, oh, we're going to play rugby, or we're going to go and do sport. And what they said, the one boy said, I'm going to pick a flower and give that to my nana. And I was like, what? Like my heart just went out.
Yeah.
But shift the whole emotional stance of playing this game, because it asks really good questions. And this is for grade 4 to 6. So yeah, I mean, and then they do coding. It's in the background again. We learn how to code.
So you're teaching something with some other context. So
absolutely.
And one of the things I kind of took from that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. When you're doing the Dragon of Disengagement, first of all, Bruce showed a board, right, which is virtual, but you can also have a physical mat with the magnetic tiles with it, right? So that your bot can either move around your screen, or it can move around in real life, or both. And
so we support that screen free, or we can bridge it. We can bridge the physical and the digital together, or we can do digital only.
So that's the box. It comes in this little box. It's a board game, 4 to 6 players, and it can be in your library. It can be that last, 20 minutes of the class on a Friday.
Absolutely.
Some teachers take one question per week, and then they actually use that conversation throughout the week as well.
Use it on a Monday morning, and then just reinforce that all week long. Oh, some great ideas there. The other thing I wanted to kind of get at too was, you talked about boys versus girls there and starting this. And now, because I'm just thinking, skeptic teacher in my head here going, yeah, the kids aren't going to talk, right? But they're not at first. You kind of have to let them sit in their misery, and you have to let them sit in their struggle as well, right? So that's built in as part of these projects, where, because teachers were so quick to give the kids the answer because we got to move on, right? Cover, not discover. But here you're like saying, Yeah, struggle. Yeah. Feel a little uncomfortable, feel a little awkward. That's okay because you're learning some skills. And you
Yeah,
see kids change.
absolutely. Yep. And I think one of the nicest things we've seen, and this was Eden Prairie District Schools, when they were using KaiBot, they actually had they got all the robots. They gave the KaiBots to the students and said, next Friday, you need to present back to the teachers. I mean, what an amazing, the students were teaching the teachers about computer science and computational thinking. So they now then said, that was so successful as, hey, we're going to have a parent evening and you're going to show your parents what you've learned. And I think it is sometimes we just need to flip the thing, because sometimes our teachers are scared to let go. They feel they have to control everything instead of walking alongside and help grow, because everybody can learn. I think there's no way that we can say, even at my age, I learn every single day. And
Absolutely.
I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think learning to code is like learning to play golf. But and I don't play golf, so don't get me started on that. It drives me nuts. But I have tried it, right? And I have experienced it once, and I never wanted to experience that again, that frustration. But where I'm going with this is, like, we have to give students the light bulb opportunities in these different career field areas, right? So let them experience coding. But if we give them a poor experience, then they won't do that, right? Okay, but how do we give them a good experience? Well, that means giving both boys and girls the opportunity to show that they have confidence to be able to be capable of doing an activity, whatever that activity is, right? Whether it is sports or coding or whatever that is.
Right.
Let it be capable at that and experience success, because then they've got that little, that little moment of success in their heads, then future career that they go into, they go, oh yeah, I did that once. Haven't we all done that when we said, oh yeah, I've done that once, and I managed to do that little task. So that gives you enough confidence to go forward and do a much bigger task on that.
And I think at the same time I think we're in a much better space now, and we do get more girls into tech and everything. But I still think there is areas where girls come in grade 6 to 8, all of a sudden they learn about computer science, and they're like, that's too hard. We don't want to go into a tech world. We want to do something else. But if we show that in a social emotional way, or in a math way, or in some literacy, creative writing, it may just change their view on computer science and thinking, oh, geeks, it's boys. And we're seeing more and more girls going into the tech field.
And I see a lot of it getting into art, getting into music, right? So it's not just, we're so quick as teachers to pigeonhole, right? Hey, it's, coding. Oh, I can't code. It's a tech thing. I'm not, right? Because so often we hear this is, and I'd love your thought on this too. It's not okay for us to say, hey, I can't read. But it's almost like a badge of honor for people to say, yeah, I'm not good at math. Right? What's the difference? I mean, it's a language, like you said, coding is a language, but almost it's like some people like, yeah, I'm not good at math, sorry. And all of a sudden we're okay. But if I came up to you and I said, well, I can't read, all of a sudden it's like, oh, right? But they're the same thing. So you're just exposing them in a different way.
Absolutely. And I think we've got such a cool story. We had this little one, and it was a 6-year-old little boy. And when we started the Math in Action program, he went, I hate math. I don't want to do this. Then we brought out the KaiBots, and he said, I love robotics. I'm really good at robotics. And we said to him, it's the same thing. Robotics is math. And he goes, no. And then we showed him, and he goes like, I love math. And I'm like, when did that shift happen? How? All of a sudden, it was really I think one of the biggest challenges in education isn't the technology. It's really the identity. So by the time many children are 8 or 9 years old, they've already decided who they are. Mm-hmm. And they say things like, I can't read. I'm not good at math. I'm not a computer person. But the problem is they stop trying because we believe and they believe it's a label, and that's what we need to really change.
And just following on, that's where we found, like, you put a Kybot in front of a student, and when you do that, their focus shifts from I can't do math to like, this is not math. I'm doing coding, right? But they go, how many tiles did you move forward? Like, well, I 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And by the end of it, they go, oh, geez, I did math. I did times table. I did subtraction. I did all these things. But it was fun. I had fun doing it. It's like, hey, but that's what's important, right? Math is boring as bleep, bleep, bleep. Without giving it purpose, right? You got to give these things purpose. Let kids connect to what they enjoy.
They got to have context. They definitely have to have context, because like you could even take your product and do math well as part of a literacy. You're reading a story, and you could make the Kybot act out a section of the story. So you're still doing coding, but you're doing it in a way to, right? So you're doing all of these. I love I'm going in a bunch of different directions. I apologize. But, all of these different, what I call the core four: science, social studies, math, and language arts, whichever language you're speaking. Right? The core four. All of that's built in. But behind it, you're doing coding. You're doing computer science. You're teaching computational thinking. You're doing collaboration. You're doing all these things that you're not going to stand up on a Tuesday morning in front of your class and say, today we're going to do collaboration for 40 minutes. Right? But you give them a Kybot and a problem, and all of a sudden you got collaboration and creativity and critical thinking and all these skills that are going to breed success. Maybe not today, but maybe in 10 years, maybe in a week and a half.
Yeah, I think the one I like is the biggest bug fix isn't in the robot, right? It's in the belief system that says that the kid says, I'm not good enough. It's not that the kid is not capable. It's that they fail because they're convinced themselves that they're incapable.
Yeah, kids don't wake up in the morning saying, oh, okay, well, I really want to learn algebra today. They wake up saying, I want to solve a problem. I want to build. I want to play and explore. And we need to tap into the curiosity. And I believe the math and the literacy will actually come naturally.
So are there some things because I know I had this as a teacher. When you've gone into a classroom or heard back from feedback from the field, is there times when the Kybot has been used, or Kylab, or any of your tools, in a way that you like, well, I never thought it was going to be used that way? Or I never thought of an application like that, where a kid or a teacher said, I'm going to try that?
Slightly on topic to that conversation, and I'll tell you a story, is that when I was first trialing Kybot in the classroom, this is a very emotional story for me, because it took me back to my roots. But what happened was, I was trialing Kybot in a classroom. There's about 15 kids all the way around the table. I was there trying to manage, like, I don't know how many was it, 8 Kybots and a whole bunch of stuff. I was like inundated with, students like using and trialing it out and seeing what it is. And everybody was like really involved, right? Including myself. I was like, whoa, okay, do this, do that, do that. But in the corner of my eye, I like looked up and I was like, oh, there's these twin identical boys. And you don't see identical, well, not that I get into the classroom much. I don't see a lot of identical twin boys much. I was like, oh, that's unusual. You don't see that every day. Anyway, I carried on, and everyone's carry on using. And then I looked up again, and I was like, why is the one twin who's identical not using the product? He's just standing there. Like, what's wrong with him? Like, what? So it got me intrigued. I was like, so I said to him, hey, why are you not playing with Kybot? And he said, his brother said he's blind. And I'm like, oh my God, I failed this kid. It took me back to how I felt. And it really upset me. And I didn't know how to respond to that kid at that time. And I came back to our team and I said, we have got to do everything in our power to make sure we don't leave that one student behind. And we spent a lot of time making Kybot, fully inclusive. And we're very proud now that the American Printing House is providing Kybot for free with federal quota to all blind students across America. And, that's a very proud moment for our team and for myself. Yeah.
But I think
that's sorry, off topic, like I said, but that was the one moment that really changed my life and Kybot's direction as well.
And I think something that sort of got to me last year is we had Kybot and they were using it in one of the Utah districts. And it was in the STEM class during the STEM period. And I went back after about 6 months and I said to the teacher, Cynthia Lloyd, an amazing teacher, and I said, Cynthia, have you seen some increase? Is there more engagement in STEM? And she goes, you will not believe the math outcomes. I'm like, what do you mean? She gets, we did the Acadians math scores and we can directly relate it to Kybot. And we have increased our scores by 10% in Utah State. I'm like, what? She goes, because we could show them that Kybot with computational thinking will help math. So that physical tactile learning, that when you move 3 cards and another 3 tiles, 3 plus 3 is 6. She said, and then we got to angles and all of that. And it's what the robot could do. And it was that visual, feeling it, seeing it, being there. And she said, that's what changed it. So they're actually now going to move it also into the math class. And that came math in the STEM class. So now we're bringing it straight into the math class because we've got a lot of math teachers that say, I don't do computer science. That's the technology department.
Yep.
And we say, try it. And you'll see that they're going to get the math concepts so much easier. And we're doing similar thing with literacy. I mean, I love one of my most favorite books is My Very Hungry Caterpillar. And we've got this as a little lesson where you drive your robot to what did the caterpillar eat? So it is really just bringing in those moments that students are going to just, remember.
Yeah, and buy into. Exactly. And that's one of those happy little side lights there that math scores go up 10% by playing with an educational tool like a Kybot. That's awesome. Couple quick, we're running short on time here, so I got a couple, rapid fire things. One of the things I talk about all the time, because I'm all about, as well, what can a teacher do on a Tuesday morning, right? Like what can they do tomorrow morning? I call it the Tuesday test that can make a difference. So with Kybot, with what you're talking about, what's one thing, even though our teachers here are going on summer vacation, yours aren't because you're going into winter down in the other part of the world. What's something a teacher could do next week to make learning more hands-on, whether it's with Kybot or not?
I think we often focus on what students can't do. And I would say tomorrow morning before teaching, a single lesson, find the student who's already decided they're not good enough and give them a win. And that would be my, not a compliment, a genuine win. And we do that even in the business. We say, what was your win last week? And when people can stand up and say, I've done this. I finished the budget, or I finished the spreadsheet, or I completed, or I did something nice at home. Because I think often we also separate what happens in the classroom versus what happens at home. And if we can actually get the buy-in from parents to care what the kid actually learned and not just say, well, that's the teacher's job, I think that's going to make a difference. So for me, it is just give the kid. There's one school, and I can't remember where it was, but the principal was saying, by the end of the week, it was a small school. I think there was 400 students. He said, I will say hello by name each student. And I thought, wow, isn't that something? Make kids feel special.
From my side, I think give students a challenge they can solve. Give them something they can solve. Let them experience success. And then they'll be ready to learn anything. If they have success, they'll build confidence, and with confidence, they'll learn anything you give them.
Awesome. Love the confidence. Love to give it a shot. Try some things. So, in all the stuff you've seen, you've gone into schools, you've gone in and you've done trials, and you've tested all your stuff out, and you've talked to a bunch of teachers. What's one thing that you think gives you hope that in schools today? I know I'm giving you some toughies.
Yeah, no. I think it's a good question. We haven't touched on the AI, the whole AI concept around, do we need to still teach coding if AI can do all of that? That's probably a whole new, other side. But I think really what gives me hope is that everywhere in the world, a teacher changes the trajectory of a child's life without even realizing it. And that's what gives me hope. Small moments create big futures. And I will just,
that's definitely mine. I like that small moments build big futures. That's awesome. That needs to go somewhere. That needs to go somewhere. That's a great tagline.
It's true. It's true. Just plant a little seed and it's going to grow into a massive forest.
Especially when you're in the K1, 2 areas as well, because that's just going to, it goes back to Bruce's stepladder analogy. They're going to be climbing the ladder. And is that ladder going to get wider? I love that. One last question before we wrap up. If you walked into a classroom on that random Tuesday and students were, quote, engaged, right? What does that look like? How do you know students are engaged?
I'll tell you how I know is when the school bell rings and they don't look up. And we have seen this in a classroom. And the teacher, can you pack up the coding cards? And they're like, just one more. Let me just run it once more. That's what's engagement.
Yeah, when time flies. I love it. So we need to find out ways. Can you tell our listeners here how they can find out more about Kai's education, the Kai bots, get in touch with you guys, connect with you? I'd love to share some of those links out here with us in the show notes.
Hey, well, thanks, Dan. Just get in touch with us. Send us an email. We're humans. We're not AI bots. So, just flick us an email. We would love to hear from your listeners. And if you send us an email, I'll send you back a little gift, right? A coupon for something. Making management decisions here, but I'll send you back a coupon and get you a discount off, and let's have a conversation on how we can improve learning, in your school or even at home or for your grandkids so my email is Bruce at kaiseducation.com. And Ronel is a difficult one. It's
just go hello@kaiseducation.com. I don't think it's anything difficult. But I think let's just add, I would like 1,000 emails, but if you can say you heard about us on the TechEd Clubhouse podcast, you will get that voucher. How about that? I think
I
that would
love
be a
it.
good one.
I love it. I appreciate that. You guys are both on LinkedIn. I'll put your if it's okay, I'll put your contact there. They're great people to reach out to, have conversations. They love having conversations. I enjoyed our time today. I can't wait to meet you guys in person at some point, so that we can, have some fun with Kai's education and all this stuff. I appreciate the time we spent today, because it's in one thing I told my wife here before I jumped on this. I know the world's not going to end today because it's already tomorrow where you guys are. I'm recording this on a Thursday night. It's Friday afternoon down in New Zealand. So I know that the world's not going to end on Thursday, because it's already tomorrow down there. Thank you for your time. It was my pleasure. I look forward to having more and more conversations with you guys.
It's been a privilege, and I really appreciate for everything you do for the community and support all the educators and students, and grateful for this opportunity to be part of it. Thank you.